Can you see me okay? Let's pull up a page here. Talk about crop protection. Okay, if you want to show someone some examples of lethal crop protection measures, just go to your YouTube search bar and type in crop protection shooting. And you'll get, here's the crop protection with Jeff Garrett, pea crop protection, crop protection shooting. Here, let's watch some crop protection here.
Welcome to the shooting show. This week we're back on the pigeons. I had a bit of a request from the farm manager. There is a significant increase in the numbers.
South African crop protection.
Welcome to the shooting show. My name is Thomas Lindy, and in this program I've gone to South Africa to follow my friend Andreas Jensen on a wing shoot. Hope you will enjoy.
Okay, I think there was a question there that I wanted to address. Robert Wadlow says, so how many vegan farmers actually shoot the animals encroaching? Well, let's see here. what they'll try to do is they'll use something like netting. Give you an example. The horrible truth about bird netting. Terrible experience with bird control method, bird netting. 2 seagulls have been found dead on the rooftop of the building next to a seriously injured pigeon. So the fact is that vegan gardeners, vegan farmers will try to use this netting to try to protect their crops. First issue is that this netting is made of petroleum. So it's a petroleum product. You've got to factor in all of the destruction and animal deaths that are associated with drilling oil, delivering oil. Whereas regenerative rotational grazing of ruminants does not require any type of plastics or petroleum products. But this netting that they put to protect the crops from the birds will kill birds. 9 bird netting problems you need to know. So the bird nets also damage the crops. Another thing that they'll do is put fences. Wildlife is constantly getting caught in the fence. So netting and fencing is lethal as well. Here's a big buck that was caught. Looked like coyotes got him. So a vegan will say you don't have to shoot these animals. All you have to do is put up netting and fencing. But the truth is that the netting and the fencing kills animals. I see this around here sometimes. They get a back leg stuck in the fence, can't get out. Most of the time when you get there, the deer is already dead, been killed by predators. So there really is no non-lethal crop protection. Here's that deer that got hit by the combine, grain harvesting. Another one caught by the back leg. They get that back leg caught a lot. And it gets twisted. So there's just no way to get it out. It gets a real tight grip on that back hoof and they can't get off. I had a goat that died that way recently. I don't know why, but she tried to jump the fence, got that back leg caught in the wire, it twisted, and there was no way that she could get out. So yeah, the vegan farmers, or the people who think that there are vegan farmers who are not killing animals, you can either kill them with guns, or you can kill them with poisons, or you can kill them with netting, or you can kill them with fencing. One way or another, animals are going to die. This is what I was talking about here. This happens around here. You see how that back leg, that gets twisted in there? Oops. There's another leg. You can see how it gets twisted. They just can't get out of that. That is something. It's difficult to get off, even with a grown man coming up there and trying to get that out. Those wires are taut before the deer even gets caught. So yeah, it sounds humane. Put up a fence. But the other thing is that you interrupt natural migration patterns. Taking down old fences to help migrating wildlife. So they're actually taking fences down so that the wildlife can live without being harassed by the fence. How does fencing land affect migrating species? For animals like pronghorn and mule deer, fences can halt or change migration routes. Unnatural barriers, how the boom in fences is harming wildlife. There's an elephant that the vegans would be in love with. However, the barriers that they want people to use are harming the elephants themselves. Bighorn sheep, jaguars, for example, are cut off from others of their kind on the opposite side of the fence. This means that genetic interaction needed to keep small populations of jaguars or ocelots healthy are affected in a negative way. These are the kinds of impacts caused by the many millions of miles barriers around the globe. So it's actually best if they can put up alleyways where wildlife can actually move from one side of the fence to the other. And the other thing that we could do to cut down on the harm that fencing is doing to the wildlife is to, we really need to change a lot of the corn and soybean farming back over to rotational ruminant grazing, which would be better for our health and better for the environment. So that's fencing and netting. Can anyone think of another, what they would think would be less than lethal crop protection measure? Some more crop protection shooting. The vegans don't bother counting these. You know, they know that livestock agriculture, we keep a tally of the animals that we kill for food. A tally is not kept for the animals that are killed for crop protection. And so it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind situation that the vegans enjoy.
You're on the fuss next. Hey, you're on the fuss girl. Yeah.
Got, like I say, put this up the vent. I've also got elastic bands on here for when it's really windy. So you wrap them round and then over the top of the wing. I'll just show you on this one, but it won't need it today. I'll show you how I do that.
So they're going to skewer the bird.
Up the vent and into the head. Stretch the wing right out. So it's got some tension on the wing. That way it won't blow off because it's got under tension. And then this one, so I've got elastic band on the little tiny ones. Wrap elastic band around there. This one might snap because it's been on there a long time. Put that under tension again, squeeze him down, and then we elastic band, flick it over the top, and it can't be seen. Like that. And then that will stop the wings coming off. If you get a really windy day, you end up flicking off and you're in and out, you're putting the wings back on. But
So here's
Sixes in ounce load.
crop
I'm
protection.
using all these up before I buy any more because I'm just going on all steel. With the Gain dealers not taking anything with lead in. So, I mean, I always shoot steel at Wildfowl here in the UK. So they're the cartridges I'm using.
Hey, OTW News, welcome to the live stream. And yes, regenerative grazing has been progressing right along. I would recommend people go out someone like George Salatin, who's been doing it intensively for long enough where he's got his vegetation growing on his property so thick that he's achieved more than 400 cow days per acre. And that means that he can support one cow on 1 acre for more than 400 days straight. And that type of success is not featured in any vegan propaganda. That way say there's not enough land in the world to do regenerative rotational grazing, and they're basing that claim on data from operations that either haven't been doing it long enough or haven't been doing the best job of doing it. Yeah, regarding let's see. Protected species, extinction, crop protection. Let's see, Tasmania. I know that they're very active in pointing out the fact that while crop agriculture has a responsibility to protect these species, they're actually culling them. Culling of native wildlife, crop protection system. So Tasmania is a place where they're actually exposing the fact that there's a gargantuan amount of animals being killed via crop protection measures.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Primary Industries. Minister, how do you justify your department's authorised killing of more than 21,000 black swans, 10,000 native hens, 5,000 wombats, 44,000 sulphur-crested cockatoos and 50,000 forester kangaroos since 2014? These are among yellow-tailed black cockatoos, galahs, masked lapwings, gulls and hundreds of thousands of other protected native animals on your government's licence to kill list. What do you say, Minister, to those Tasmanians appalled to hear that 7 platypuses were also included in culling permits? Don't you agree your government's all care and no responsibility crop protection system is pushing an unknown number of native animals towards extinction in Tasmania?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister for Primary Industries.
So you can see in Tasmania, there are groups that are exposing the fact that there are many species of animals being driven towards extinction directly by the crop protection industry. Let's see. I think there were like 22,000 black swans killed. This happens this happens very frequently, but they don't report it very much. King Island black swan culls supported by very large flocks. Approval for the culling of more than 22,000 native black swans has been granted in Tasmania since 2014. And this was crop protection culling. Quotas attached to crop protection permits have authorized the culling of 20,000 animals across the state. So that's just one state across the state. So you imagine what's happening across the globe. And these numbers are not tallied. So when a vegan tells you that more animals are killed via animal agriculture to produce meat for the dinner table, there's no way for them to actually know that, because they are not counting, and they won't even, I've not found a vegan yet that's willing to go out and try to count the animals that are being killed for crop protection shooting. And not just shooting, but you've got crop pesticides that are driving animals into extinction. The role of pesticides in the extinction crisis, Center for Food Safety. Here you've got crop agriculture Over 1 billion pounds of pesticides are now used in the U.S. each year. They are among the main factors driving global declines in biodiversity. And vegans will claim that, well, the crops are all being grown primarily to feed the animals, which is not true. For instance, about 90% of the soybeans grown in the world are processed to extract the oil. And human beings are consuming 100% of that soybean oil. Here, I'll show you. What percent of soybeans are processed? Soybeans are the dominant oil seed in the United States, accounting for about 90% of the oil seed production. Oh, this is interesting. This Our World in Data. This is what the vegans will often quote. Let me show you what they're doing here. So this is this Our World in Data. This is funded by the Bill and Bill and Belinda Gates Foundation. So there's the increase in soy production over time. Here's the map. Where most of the soybeans are being grown. And they're saying more than 3/4 of global soy is fed to animals. Now notice that they don't say 3/4 of global soybeans are fed to animals. They're saying global soy. So let's go back to what percent of soybeans are oil extracted. This is soybean. Each soybean by weight is 18 to 22% oil. Here, hold on, and I'll look this up. Bear with me here. I've got to pull up the specific page that gives the information. Okay, here we go. Where do all these soybeans go? So this is Michigan State University. Where do all these soybeans go? Oh, this has actually been edited recently. Okay, here it is. On the other hand, no. Yeah, they removed a sentence in here. See, they say 98% of the soybean meal is used for feed. It's actually a little bit less than that because the vegans, the corporations have been pursuing a vegan world, so they've been using more of the meal for their plant-based meats and so forth. And they say, on the other hand, 88% of the soybean oil is used for human consumption. Now look at what this is propaganda right here. 88% of soybean oil is used for human consumption. Consumption means you could eat it, you could use it in some other way. In other words, if I use toilet paper, I'm consuming toilet paper, but I'm not eating it. So they say the 88% is used for human consumption, mostly cooking oil. And then they say 12%, that's 88 plus 12 is 100. So 100% of the oil that is extracted from around 90% of the world's soybeans, the other 12% is used as an alternative to petroleum oil. Well, who consumes petroleum oil? Is it cattle or is it humans? So is it really fair to say that 88% of soybean oil is used for human consumption and the other 12% is used as an alternative to petroleum oil? No. Humans are consuming this alternative to petroleum oil, not livestock. So you add this 88 and this 12, and you've got 100. So 100% of the oil is consumed by human beings. And around 90% of the soybeans are processed for the oil. And a reflection of that is in something that investors call the soybean crush spread. And so it's an options trading strategy used in soybean futures. The soybean crush spread used to manage risk by combining separate soybean oil, and soybean meal futures positions into a single position. So they buy futures in soybeans, they buy futures in soybean oil, and they buy futures in soybean meal. And because 90% of the soybeans are processed to extract the oil, which is 100% consumed by humans, then this helps them mitigate their risk when trading soybean futures. Let's see. Let me look at these comments. Is there any progress in our regenerative graze movement? Well, I don't know. What do you mean by progress? Are we getting better? Yes, we're getting better. Are there more farmers doing it? Yes, there are more farmers doing it. You will, just go to YouTube. And look for mob grazing. boost reproduction results, cow health, labor efficiency, and farm management. Is mob grazing worth it on a small farm? High density mob grazing with goats. That's what we're doing here. So here's ultra high density. So what they're doing is they keep these cattle moving, but they're kept dense, and that's the way they would be, in a natural environment. Like if you look at the herds of wildebeests in Africa, they're going to be bunched together like this, and around the outside of these herds, you'll see predators like lions, and there's safety in numbers, so they keep the animals stay close together, and that helps protect them. And it also adds a benefit because as this mob moves through the landscape, similar to a giant amoeba, it's pruning the vegetation, but also leaving behind a trail of manure and urine, which serve as fertilizer, and that will leave the ground fertile. And as the herd moves off, then they don't come back to that same spot for maybe 30 days, 60 days, maybe a year before they get to that spot. And the spot will take advantage of that pruning and fertilization that passed by, and it'll be more lush than it was the first time they moved through. And it was because of huge herds of bison and deer and antelope and elk and moose and other ruminants that covered the continents that left us with the wonderful black, carbon-rich, healthy soil that we had before the Industrial Revolution got rolling. And what has destroyed the soil more than anything else is crop tillage. Crop tillage destroys the soil, whereas mob grazing or regenerative grazing actually, here's a grass-fed cows won't save the climate. Grass-fed cattle do contribute to CO2 sequestration, right? But when it's too wet, carbon uptake is impeded. Well, it's not too wet, so let's do it. This is just propaganda trying to piss on regenerative rotational grazing. These people want to be reliant upon synthetic and mined nitrogen, potassium, and phosphate. Can cows help mitigate climate change? Yes, they can. Livestock emit greenhouse gases, but they also sequester carbon. And besides that, cattle emissions, these are ruminants. Ruminants have always been around, and that means that their emissions are biogenic. Biogenic carbon is mostly regarded as preferable to non-biogenic. Biogenic means created by nature. Non-biogenic is created by man. And the emissions from cattle are just replacing the emissions from the huge herds of elk and deer and bison that were covering the continents before the Industrial Revolution. So ruminant emissions are just part of the natural cycles. They're not like what you get, from, say, something like fertilizer methane. This kind of pollution is not part of the natural cycles. 100 times more pollution than reported. How new technology exposed a whole industry. The numbers are stunning. Methane pollution from ammonia fertilizer plants is 100 times higher than what the industry reports. So anytime an industry is reporting, especially something that, this is what the veganic farming relies upon, this type of fertilizer. And the industry is reporting their emissions, and it turns out that they're 100 times underreporting what they're actually doing. The fertilizer industry uses natural gas, of which about 95% is methane. So this figure exceeds the EPA's estimate for the entire U.S. industrial sector of 8,000 metric tons of methane each year. There's one of, let's see. Yeah, look at this. We took one small industry that most people have never heard of and found that its methane emissions were 3 times higher than the EPA assumed was emitted by all industrial production in the United States. So this is what is, if you get rid of livestock, then you're going to be 100% reliant upon this fertilizer industry, this petroleum-based fertilizer industry that's emitting 100 times more fertilizer than they had reported, which is 3 times higher than the EPA assumed was emitted by all industrial production in the United States. 3 times higher. 3 times higher. I'm going to go to the comments real quick. OTW is on the right page. It is not legal to decimate non-invasive bird flocks. Depends on where you are, and they can get permits from the government, and the government will hand those out like candy. Randall Owen says, how can we be like New Zealand? All their beef is grass fed. Do they have an advantage because of the weather? Now, let me show you. You can stockpile grasses, and even if they're under snow, you can. Let me show you what Gabe Brown is doing. Gabe Brown stockpiled grass winter. So here he's using, he's doing bale grazing, and that's to get that builds the soil. You don't have to do that forever, but it is a good way to get the soil kick-started. Gabe Brown, winter grazing of cover crops. Grazing winter stockpiled grass.
Come to TurboTax and
Let's see if we can get an example. That's what I've done this year is I haven't fed any winter supplement feed. I just left one of my fields completely vacant all spring, all summer. I let the vegetation get overgrown. And then this winter, I moved them in. It looked just very much like this, where the grass was it gets brown, but of course hay is brown. So you don't have to cut it and bale it. You can just leave it be in the field, even if it's covered in snow. You're going to be able to bring cattle in there, and they'll move the snow out of the way and eat the grass underneath. You don't need, he's got more cattle than I do, so he's having to back up. You can see right up here, he's got a round bale right there. But and if I had more cattle, I would probably have to do the same until the grass is lush enough to sustain the herd through the winter. But all you have to do is stockpile that. Don't touch it in the spring and summer. Let it grow up big and lush, and then in the wintertime, piece that out to the cattle, an acre or two at a time per day, and let them chew that down. And just like you're building a quilt, just give them one square at a time and let them chew that down while they're fertilizing it. But that's how you stockpile winter grazing right there. So you don't have to feed them grain during the wintertime. It's something that me and other regenerative ruminant grazing professionals are trying to wean ourselves out of. Just reading, New Zealand has an advantage when it comes to grass-fed beef production because of the temperate climate and abundance of pasture land. Probably true. Farming practices in New Zealand are also very well regulated, which helps ensure that the animals are well cared for and the land is managed in a sustainable way. True. Additionally, New Zealand's government has invested in programs to promote regenerative farming practices, which has helped to increase the amount of grass-fed beef production in the country. Great information. There's soy in almost everything that's packaged. True. You know, what's funny is if you look up the definition of ultra-processed foods, they will list animal fat as a common ingredient, but there is no animal fat in any of the ultra-processed foods. It's all plant, industrial plant oils, industrial seed oils, heavy in omega-6s, and we know that omega-6s are inflammatory and associated with arteriosclerosis. OTW says soy protein is often used as a cheap filler ingredient or as a source of protein in processed foods. Correct. Palm kernel oil is way healthier. Really, palm kernel oil is way healthier. Let's see. Let's look that up. Palm kernel oil omega-6 3 ratio. So it's got let's see. So the ideal ratio has been found to be somewhere between 1:1 and 1:4. So if you keep the omega-6s at 4 and the omega-3s at 1, then that's still within the range that you won't have this excess inflammation that's associated with things like arteriosclerosis. But if you move beyond a 4:1 ratio, then you start seeing the inflammation become excessive. So what is the ratio? I don't see it here. All right. And what was the claim? Palm kernel oil? Is that red palm oil? Palm oil. So you've got 6s and 3s. So 9 to 0, which is not ideal. 9 omega-6s for 0.2 omega-3s. So that's like a almost completely void of omega-3s. And it's got about a 10-to-1 ratio. So it's out of the window of what would be considered ideal for human health. Probably the best would be grass-fed butter, grass-fed ghee, grass-fed tallow. See the grass-fed omega ratios. Two parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. So a 2-to-1, that's right there in the middle of the sweet spot. Soybeans are truly only fit to be fodder crop. True. Palm oil is not healthy at all. I have to agree. Still healthier than soybean oil. I probably have to agree. Looks like Darth left us. Miss you, Darth. As far as I know, they only say palm oil is bad because it has saturated fat. No other reason. And I think the omega-3, omega-6 ratio is off. Also, let's look up what the palm oil extraction process. Okay. The solvent extraction process uses hexane or other solvents to wash the palm kernel oil from the prepared flakes. So hexane is a neurotoxin. Hexane neurotoxicity causes both axonal degeneration and demyelination. That means they harm the nerves. So that's not good. Stick to animal fats. I agree, Randall. OTW, peace out. Good night, my friend. Randall says peace. Not me. Darth. OLOL. Robert Wadlow says thanks for all your work exposing vegan nonsense. Yep, I care about future generations. I do not want to. I cannot sit and allow. I can't sit and not try. Say something you could let graze in the yard and wouldn't be harder to dress out than a deer. That would be a goat. Goat is probably the best option. Get a goat and a sheep. If you had a large yard or just a little bit of acreage, maybe an acre, 2 acres, 3 acres, get a goat and a sheep. A sheep is much like a cow. They tend to graze grass, and they don't eat a lot of things like the leaves off of trees and bushes, whereas a goat prefers the leaves off of trees and bushes first and grass second. So those two animals will complement each other. OTW says one animal that could be allowed to graze in the yard would not be harder to dress out than a deer is a sheep. Yep. There's In Memory of John Mordaunt. Welcome. Yes, but you could get good milk, cream, and butter from a miniature cow. That would be an option. I don't think about miniature cows very much, but that would be an option. I guess, I don't know, how much does a miniature cow weigh? Let's look it up. Miniature cow weight. So that's about 700 pounds. That's still pretty large. You could, that might be too big for, someone's yard. Whereas a sheep, which has a very similar diet to a cow, it's not going to weigh 700. It's going to be between 99 and 220 pounds. So for keeping something at home or a small homestead, small acreage, a sheep, a goat, a combination of the two probably better than even a miniature cow. Slappy says goat's milk tastes awful. It's kind of it does have I guess a gamey taste, you might say, but it's something that you can get used to pretty quickly. It's like liver. For instance, my wife could not eat liver. She couldn't even eat a piece of it when we met. And now she asks me several times a week to make her liver. She loves it now. So something that you think tastes awful right now, if you just start eating it and you let your palate get used to it, especially when it's something that's full of good nutrition, then your body will actually subsequently start asking you to pursue it. In Memory of John Mordaunt, it's right. We have a large garden here, and when we moved in, the entire thing had been paved over. We ripped most of it up, and everything we planted sprung up like something out of Chernobyl. Yeah, probably a lot of bacteria growing up underneath that. It had been resting that whole time underneath that being paved over. Slappy says a farting vegan emits 20 times as much methane as an average cow. Probably true. OTW News says a doctorate is not a form of government sanction, but rather a recognition of academic achievement. In memory of John Mordaunt says, because the soil was untouched for decades. Yeah. Very fortunate that we're within walking distance from fantastic organic farms. So anything we can't grow, meat and raw dairy, comes from these. That's good. I mean, you need to, everyone needs to support their local farmers, their local vegetable, fruit, and meat. Buy my place. I'm downhill from cattle pasturage and it runs off a bit and fertilizes everything. Grass grows like crazy. It's like bamboo. That's great. I never did show any, I don't think I featured it, but I did build a very long, deep swale on contour that catches millions of gallons of rain when it rains, 3 or 4 inches. And I've actually noticed a difference in the water table because I've got 2 water wells that are downhill from that swale, and the water production from those 2 water wells has improved dramatically. So learn more about swales, look into permaculture principles. They hide soy proteins in packaged meat 25 to 30%. Let's look that up. Soy protein in packaged meat. Soy protein is used in meat products not only as a non-functional filler, but also as a functional additive to improve texture and flavor of meat products and make full use of undesirable, incomplete corner raw meat. Interesting. That's in China, I guess. I don't know that they're doing it here in the United States or Canada. But yeah, we'll have to make a video about that. Hunter-gatherers often had something like 5 to 4. I guess that's the omega-6 to 3 ratio. 5-4, that's like a, I don't know, what would that be, like a 4 to 2.75? Butterfat contents highly depends on feed. Yeah, corn-fed has an 8 to 1 ratio, while grass-fed has a 2 to 1. Yeah, I think the last number I read, it was a corn-fed having a 9 to 1 ratio. It can vary a little bit because one supply of grain can have more omega-6s than the next one. In my chemistry class, says Ron Howard, during the organic chemistry class, we used some hexane or one of those related chemicals in some experiments. It smelled like gasoline. Yes, because hexane is a gasoline ingredient. And it's just amazing to me that we're extracting oil from soybeans with gasoline and then feeding the gasoline tainted waste to livestock and feeding the gasoline tainted oils to humans. In fact, let's go up to, see, soybean oil. Brain. Soybean oil can disrupt genes in the brain. Soybean oil, an increasingly common cooking oil, especially in the United States, can cause changes in the brain that could be linked to diabetes, inflammation, and brain disorders. So that's probably a combination of the hexane contamination along with the glyphosate or the Roundup contamination. So soybean oil is probably one of the most harmful oils out there. Pretty nasty stuff, pretty harmful stuff. Guggen Slayer, great stream, thank you. 700 pounds isn't very miniature. Yeah, it's like half the size of your average cow could get up to 1,200, 1,400 pounds. So they're not as small as you think they are. They look small compared to a regular cow, but if they were to sit on you, you wouldn't like it very much. Except in the fat acceptance movement. Yeah, the fat acceptance movement is just as toxic as the vegan movement is. Just as toxic, just as illogical, and just as malicious. Liver from fully grass-fed cattle, says Robert Wadlow, is much leaner and tastes way better than kibble-fed cattle liver. Yes, I agree. Totally agree with that. There's a different color to the liver that's grass-fed. There's a different texture. There's a different smell. There's a different taste. I wouldn't eat the liver of a cow that was finished in one of these high density feedlots. I also eat heart sometimes, says Robert. That's a good way to get the CoQ10 that we all need. Robert says good source of CoQ10. Yep. Slappy fistwad. Now it's not great. You don't have to mow it. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about. Maybe using rotational grazing at home. Slappy says the grass grows 1 foot every 3 days. I'm not joking. Probably from the fertilizer left over from some ruminants on his property. Milk Tea Alliance, they are a twisted cult of Satan. That's why they want to splash their black goo and everything. Oil or graphene, they love oil and plastic. The vegan cult, yes. Absolutely agree. Okay, what's next? Yeah, we can look at soybean oil, or soybean oil extraction plant pollution. Air pollutant emissions of soybean production can be extracted from the soy-based biodiesel. Hexane extraction has the highest environmental impact due to the application of organic solvent. They throw that, look at this as propaganda. They throw that word organic in there so that you look at it and go, oh, it's organic. That's no big deal. You can see they've used it in two right here. They've used the same verbiage. It's like what's going on with the news across the country. All of these local stations feeding everybody the same verbiage, word for word. And you see the same thing with these propaganda pieces that are supposed to be science. But you've got, according to our results, hexane extraction has the highest environmental impact due to the application of organic solvent. According to the results, hexane extraction has the highest environmental impacts due to the application of organic solvent. And this is organic solvent, which is hexane. Hexane is a petroleum product. Organic solvent. Hexane is a petroleum product. Is it organic? Well, I guess it's where they call it a fossil fuel. And those fossils are animals from the past, plants from the past. Is that organic? Well, I guess so. But if we have a giant oil spill, is that just supposed to be an organic spreading of organic nutrients? Soybean oil extraction process, pollutants emissions from the extraction processes, soybean oil extraction plant pollution. Let's see what the image is. Yeah. So there's your soybean oil extraction. It's not a pretty thing. It's just exactly what the vegans would claim to be against. You know, these big factories with all these petroleum needs. Oh yeah. We're consuming a lot of the soybean oil as biodiesel. I'm sure that they're polluting. Biodiesel plant fire. There's a salt. These are probably the hexane that's used to extract soybean oil caught fire. Here's a book that you guys should read. It's called Silent Spring, about pesticides. About us waking up one year with a silent spring, no birds, no insects. Why Rachel Carson's Silent Spring still resonates. Insecticides, crop. This is about crop pesticides, where they're covering me up with all kinds of pop-ups here. Let's see. The killing of birds, mammals, fishes, and indeed every form of wildlife by chemical insecticides indiscriminately sprayed on the land. The losses have been severe and in some cases catastrophic. So that's a good book, Silent Spring. And then also, let's see, pesticides killing songbirds. Neonics, these are the kinds of pesticides that Earthling Ed is being funded by. There's a neonicotinoid pesticide company that pours money into his pockets. It's Blue Horizon. Blue Horizon has a company, they own companies that sell these insecticides. So Earthling Ed is basically profiting directly from driving animals extinct, believe it or not. These pesticides act like an appetite suppressant for birds, making them lose weight within hours. Huge decline in songbirds linked to neonicotinoids. So neonicotinoids crops. In addition to home use, neonics are used in high concentrations in the coatings of seeds used to grow corn, canola, sunflowers, soy, vegetables, and other crops. So none of these deaths, grassland bird declines. You'll notice that when the vegans will give you propaganda that has apparently counted or calculated how many animals are being killed by crop harvesting, and they're only counting like the field mice that get chewed up by the grain harvesting equipment. But they do not, in that paper, which is not a peer-reviewed study, it was the guy that put it together is an animal rights activist. Problem with animal rights activists is most of them, the vast majority of them, only focus on a few species. Those are the farm animals. They care about the farm pigs. They care about the chickens. They care about the cattle, but they don't care about wild animals like these grassland birds that are declining because of the neonicotinoids that are being used in plant agriculture. And then if you do call them out on that, again, they'll claim that all of the plant agriculture goes to the cows. Meanwhile, there they are eating soybeans. But they don't want to take any responsibility for the animals that die for their menu. Insecticides found to kill birds. We found that neonics or neonicotinoids are toxic to birds and invertebrates, even in small quantities. So you'll also find that soybean and corn fertilizers are causing oceanic dead zones. Ocean dead zones are largely caused by a process particularly associated with corn and soy. They are significant contributors to dead zones. So you won't find a vegan that will admit that the corn and soy that they're consuming is associated with oceanic dead zones. And they'll say, well, the cows are eating all the soybeans, but the truth is that cows, they don't even eat the soybean meal. There's only 2% of the, we can even go to the Our World in Data, which is the Bill and Melinda Gates funded propaganda. Look at soy. And you can even see here this is the world's soy. And look at that, beef and dairy. Dairy 1.4% of all the soy, and that's byproduct. That's the junk. That's the waste that's left over, industrial waste left over after hexane soybean extraction. So the dairy and beef together don't even add up to 2%. It's 1.9% of all the soybeans in the world. Most of the soybean meal is going to poultry and pigs. But that's you see right here, it says soybeans processed to soy cake or feed. So soy cake is the industrial waste left over after the oil is extracted. And the oil is going to humans. So this this gray bar right here, this entire gray bar represents all of the soybean production. And this whole part right here in the middle, the blue and the red and the green, represents almost 100% of the soybeans being processed to remove the oil, which is 100% being consumed by humans. So in other words, ridding the world of all livestock is not going to decrease soybean production at all, because none of the animals are eating whole soybeans. They're eating the part of the soybean that would otherwise be thrown away because it's contaminated with hexane, because it's been squeezed and crushed and drenched in hexane to extract the oil. Robert Wadlow says heart tastes quite. Oh, I guess I was on the wrong. I didn't even have you all on the same page that whole time I was showing you all that. Let me back up. Let me go to. Here we go. Our World in Data Soy. Here we go. This is the graph I was looking at here. And right here is the global soy production and how much are the cattle consuming. Right here you see dairy 1.4%, beef 0.5%. So less than 2% of the global soy production is consumed by cattle. But you won't find a vegan who will admit that. And this is actually a vegan-friendly publication that was funded by Bill Gates, who's heavily invested in plant-based mock meats. So he's he's been somewhat dishonest. Like right here, global soy production, this 20%, that's not 20% of the soybeans, that's 20% of each soybean. 20% of each soybean is going to oil, tofu, soy milk, and other. And then the animal feed is what's left over after the oil is extracted. The animal feed is the industrial waste. Humans cannot eat it. It's not that 76% of all soybeans are going to cattle. It's that 76% of each soybean is going to cattle, because, or not cattle, but livestock, mostly poultry and pigs. But 76% of each soybean after oil is extracted is industrial waste. And that industrial waste is being fed to animals. We could stop doing that. We could use that. We could start phasing out soy production until we phase it out, or close to phasing it out. We could leave a little bit for, whatever people want to use a little bit for, but you could begin to phase it out and use that that, well, first of all, you'd have to stop using the hexane so that it wouldn't be toxic to the soil, but it could be a soil amendment that you could add to pastures to prime vegetation growth for regenerative ruminant grazing systems. Rod Howard says, to be fair, any hydrocarbons have always been called organic in chemistry. It's a shame we have the same terminology for food, and the average person doesn't know the difference when it's used that way. It's very true. They play word games with us, and only, I don't want to offend people, but there are a lot of people who are so distracted with Hollywood and the lies being told on television. They just don't have the curiosity or they have the ability, they just don't have the drive to look behind the curtain and see what's really going on in the world. You've reminded me to read that book. I've read Stephanie Seneff's Toxic Legacy book about glyphosate. I haven't read that one, but I'm sure that it's good. Anyone interested should look up that book as well. Look up the book I mentioned, which is Silent Spring, and then Toxic Legacy about glyphosate. Toscadana says, I know they've killed most of the bees here in North Texas. I've seen 5 bees since 2013. And most butterflies are gone, and armadillos. Yeah, just a few years ago, we had armadillos everywhere, and I'm not seeing them anymore. It's like they all disappeared. It's funny how an animal that you see all the time can just disappear, and it might be a year or two later when you go, when's the last time I saw an armadillo? That's interesting. I wonder what happened to the armadillos. I did see an armadillo skeleton in the field the other day. Maybe they sprayed something that killed them all. Because armadillos are edible. They're wanting to wipe out anything that we might be able to eat if we don't want to be reliant upon the machine. So who knows? If you became invisible for the day, what would you do? I probably would get in trouble if I disclosed that information. Toscadana says, we used to have so much roadkill here, especially when there was no moon, and now you see almost nothing. Yeah, it's amazing. And this is, a lot of it is being caused by crop agriculture because of the pesticides. OTW, weren't you supposed to have an open panel? Would you like to come on? Patrick, if you want to come on, I'll have you on. If you're still there. Go around Hollow Man Kevin Bacon style. Yeah. Here, I will. Let me see if I can find a link. Here's a link. Anyone wants to come on, we'll have you on. There's the link to the StreamYard. There's tons of armadillos in Missouri, says Slappy Fistwad. I think they all just migrated north. They could have. I didn't know that armadillos migrated during the winter, but who knows? I don't know why they would migrate north in the winter, but get me some tea. Guggen Slayer only 7%. 7% of what? What are we talking about? How many people we have here today? 4? We're down to 4. Oh, yeah, soybeans fed directly. I think it's 7% are fed directly to livestock, and another 7% are fed directly to humans. So 14% fed directly to livestock and humans together. Let's see, what else? Here's something. Soybean market driver veganism. Vegan protein demand set to increase the soy market value. So, you know, the vegans will always blame soybean production on the livestock, but it's the vegans themselves that are actually driving the soybean market forward right now. Look at this. Growing health and sustainability trends are fostering the shift forward for a vegan diet, which is increasingly favoring soy-based food. But what will a vegan say? The soy is the livestock's fault. Blame it on the animals. That's how much they love the animals, is that they'll take their affinity for soy-based foods and blame it on the animals. And like, vegan food industry to 2031, increasing environmental concerns are driving growth. So soybean production and soybean oil extraction, processing, hexane, glyphosate, neonicotinoid pesticides, probably the most harmful, polluting, destructive, disease-causing industry in the world, is growing because of increasing environmental concerns. Makes absolutely no sense. Growing veganism. These are all market research. Growing veganism is bound to profit the global soybean derivatives market. But ask a vegan, and what are they going to say? The cows eat all the crops. The cows, they eat all the crops. None of this destruction is our fault. Now, where are those soy curls? I got to have some protein. Toscadana says, I don't want to live in this world where we're starved and only fed soy and crickets. Well, best thing I can recommend, Toscadana, is to start a garden, grow some, probably some leafy greens and some starches, and get you a goat and a sheep, maybe 2 goats and 2 sheep, so that you can get a male and a female of each, so that you can multiply them if you want. You can replace them when you want. You can milk them. You can eat them. Or get some rabbits. Get some rabbits, get some chickens. The chickens right now, there's a war being waged against the chickens right now, however. Vagoon, Robert Wadlow says, Vagoon NPCs, it's time for a system upgrade or to replace their chips. Yes. Toscadana, cows would die eating only corn and soy. The rumen would become too acidic and they'd starve. I can't eat greens at all. I'm very allergic to plants. Yeah, I think that I'm not sure that you're talking about cooked greens. I did cover that in my most recent community page. Someone was asking about sources of vitamin K1, and the best sources of K1, which are involved with the ability for human blood to clot, is coming from mostly leafy greens. If you boil leafy greens for 30 minutes and then discard the water, you can remove the goitrogens and the oxalates by about 90%. So that's pretty good. So there actually is a place for those greens, although you can get vitamin K1 from some berries and grapes, and there's a little bit in liver as well: beef liver, sheep liver, goat liver, goose liver will have some K1, but the large quantities of K1 will come in the leafy greens. I would never eat leafy greens like spinach raw, but if you boil it for 30 minutes, I would bet that you wouldn't have an allergic reaction to spinach that's been boiled for 30 minutes in distilled water. That's just I have a feeling that you wouldn't have an allergic reaction to that. Now, if you eat it raw, that's a different story. But if you boil it for 30 minutes, it may not harm you. Besides the K1, I don't know what else would be there that you would need. Toscadana, all greens make me violently ill. It's gotten very bad the older I've gotten. I can't even eat fermented greens. I've been living on beef, raw milk, cream, and eggs for 4 years. Well, I wonder if you're eating liver. I didn't see you list liver there. There's certain vitamins that are in liver that you won't find in things like ground beef. Slappy Fiskwad says leafy greens like spinach are full of toxic oxalates. No thanks. I don't want kidney stones. I don't know if you heard me, Slappy Fiskwad, but if you take spinach and you boil it for 30 minutes, it will decrease the oxalates by about 90% if you discard the water. So if you boil the spinach for 30 minutes and drain the water, throw the water away, then you'll decrease those oxalates by about 90%. Otherwise, I would love for you to tell me, besides leafy greens, what's your best source of vitamin K1? Because I do think that we need vitamin K1 in our diet. Toscadana, yes, I eat 1 pound of liver every month. I guess you eat that 1 pound of liver over kind of a little bit of a time at a time, which is what I would think would be the best thing to do rather than sitting down once a month and eating 1 pound of liver. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. Let's see what else is going on in the roasted soybean market. The increasing vegetarian and vegan population prefers plant-based proteins. Rising trend of veganism is driving the demand for soy milk. So if you look, you see that veganism right now is driving the soybean market forward. Meanwhile, the vegans will blame cattle, and cattle are consuming less soybeans right now than human beings are. Tosca Donna about the liver, she says she eats it all, usually in 1 week. I'm guessing that's because the liver is coming in one pack in a package. You're opening the package, there's a pound there, so you don't want to refreeze it. What I do is I've got a bandsaw that's made for cutting meat, like frozen meat. So I can take a 1 pound package of liver and open it up frozen, take it to the bandsaw and cut it up into as many segments as I would like, and then re-vacuum package those individual servings, and that way I can eat, like maybe 10% of the package this week and 10% of the package next week, or spread it out. Also, I use ghee. Ghee's got a much higher smoke point than the other oils or the other fats. Let's see. Let me show you all that. Ghee smoke point, 482 degrees Fahrenheit. So right here, ghee has a higher smoke point than butter, about 465 compared to butter's 350. You see that? 465 compared to 350 on butter. And the reason why that's important is because when you bring a fat above its smoke point, then you oxidize it, you turn it rancid. And so if you consume a rancid fat, then that rancid fat is going to oxidize your cells, oxidize your tissues, increase your chances of cancer, increase your rate of aging, etc. So that's clarified butter, approximate smoke point is 482. Compare that to, like, some people are using olive oil, and that's the smoke point of genuine extra virgin olive oil is 410 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's 410 compared to 482. Oh, I'm still using the wrong. I hate when I do that. Okay, ghee, smoke point, 482. Compare that to olive oil. $410. So olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, that's the very expensive version, is 410. whereas ghee is 482. That's considerably higher. You don't want to consume rancid fat that you've burned while you've been cooking your liver or whatever. It defeats some of the purpose of eating healthy meats if you cook it in a fat that's got a low smoke point and you end up turning it rancid. Toscadana, vegans are useful idiots who are in for a real surprise once they've depleted themselves of animal nutrients, and there won't be any animals for them to eat or replenish themselves. And that's the danger of mandating a global vegan, a vegan world, is because we would all be moving towards this day, and it'll be different for each person the day that they actually run into a real harmful deficiency. But once you do come across that deficiency and you start feeling the degeneration in a vegan world, there won't be any, unless you're willing to go out and break the law, because at that point they will, they'll criminalize hunting, they'll criminalize harvesting animals from the wild. So there won't be any way to go out and get some beef liver or something to replenish those nutrients that you've lost. Green Ghost says, I love ghee. Great way to crisp up a steak. I totally agree. You can bring ghee up to a higher temperature than you can any of the other cooking oils, even even lard. Let's see. Ghee smoke point is 482 Fahrenheit, and lard is 374. And tallow, lard is pork fat, tallow is beef fat. So tallow smoke point is 374. So beef fat 374, pork fat 374, and ghee 482. So that's why I prefer to cook with ghee than any other fat. Grass-fed ghee. Guggen, I mix the coconut oil and butter in the pan and it seems to not burn. Yeah, what is the smoke point of coconut oil? It's got a smoke point of 350. Refined coconut oil has a higher smoke point of 400. So that's still not as good as ghee, which is about 82 points Fahrenheit higher. So it's that much less likely to go rancid. 400 for coconut oil, 482 for ghee. So straight ghee is what I prefer. Guggen Slayer, European Union is so over. Yeah, the West is moving in the direction of being so over. Green Ghost says, love me some schmaltz. Too good to fry up some chicken skin cracklings instead of throwing the chicken skin away. Yeah, I totally agree, especially if it's pastured chicken. If you get chicken from the, HEB that's been fed a vegan diet full of glyphosate, tainted seed or feed, probably wouldn't be as healthy as like some of the chickens running around here out in the pasture, digging through the horse manure for their next maggot. What are we down to now? We have 4 watching. Lori Lee, hello. Welcome. Glad you came, Lori. You have any questions? Well, I guess OTW News left. I was going to have him on. I did put a link up. Anyone wants to come on, there's the link. We were just talking about the smoke point of ghee versus everything else. I think it's got the highest smoke point at 482. It's higher than coconut oil. It's higher than lard. It's higher than olive oil. It's higher than tallow. Let's see what soybean oil is. $4.53. That's higher than some of the animal fats. However, that's probably going to be contaminated with hexane, which is gasoline. Hexane is used to extract oil from soybeans and generate soybean meal for use in animal diets. They use hexane in just about every seed oil extraction that exists. Lori Lee, hi JD, just wanted to thank you for everything you do. You're a genuine person who wants to help. Thank you, Lori. Yes, I do genuinely want to help. You're right about that. Well, I guess if no one's got any more questions, I guess we'll wrap it up. Anyone have anything else they want to cover before we go? Green Ghost says Mike could put it in your diesel truck. That's about it for soybean oil. Yeah, I completely agree with that. RFB 321 says I bought a quarter cow locally. How do I know if it's really grass-fed, finished as advertised? Probably no practical way for you to tell once you get the beef back home. There can be a yellow tint to the fat, but that's not 100% foolproof. There is grass-fed beef that the fat is not yellow, but in some cases it will be yellow, and that is a good indicator. You can feel pretty comfortable if it's yellow that it's grass-fed, but if it's not yellow, that does not mean that it's not grass-fed. It could be a younger steer or cow, because the older they get, the more yellow the fat becomes as well. But probably the best way to tell if it's grass finished is to ask the farmer if you can go onto his operation and have a look at what he's doing. And if he's feeding grain, there will be signs of that. There'll be usually infrastructure out there, because you don't just pour the grain. Sometimes they can with like the cattle cubes. They can just pour it out on the ground. But usually in a grain-fed operation, they'll have some type of container, some type of trough that they'll pour the feed into, so that feed is not mashed as they're eating it, doesn't get stepped on, doesn't get mashed into the ground. And then the farmer's perspective, that feed would be wasted. So there's ways to go onto a farmer's property who's providing local beef and have a look at his operation. If he'll let you on the prop, first of all, if he won't let you on the property at all, that's a questionable situation. There's just really no way for you to figure out exactly what he's doing. But if you go over there and he's got a regenerative rotational operation going on where you can see his cattle are out on pasture eating grass, and you don't have to just go once. Go once a month. Go over there and see what he's doing. Visit him. Get to know him. See what he's doing. See how he's raising his cattle. Most of the people that I know that sell grass-fed beef are selling grass-fed beef. So most people who are going the grass-fed route have an aversion to the grain feeding process. So most of them, they don't want to feed their cattle grain. Green Ghost, if I was to have to feed a cow some feed, what would you recommend? Well, what I would recommend is hay. I wouldn't recommend feeding them grain. It does cause their rumen to become acidic. It harms the bacterial culture that's in the rumen. It can lead to them being sick and requiring antibiotics. So I would recommend hay, and organic hay is what I would recommend as feed if you had to feed a cow something. Yes, get to know the farmer. Those farmers, they're out there on that acreage, spending most of their time with the grass and the trees and the animals. They'll probably welcome your company and enjoy having you out there, showing you around, giving them someone to have a conversation with from time to time. Lori Lee, my mother says chicken are not full when they're eating only grass. Do you have any experience with that? Yeah, I don't, my chickens don't eat only grass. They eat some grass. They also eat, I've got them situated where they can approach a cow patty, and they will take their claws and they'll rip that apart. So they'll be spreading that manure, and there'll be flies that land on that manure, lay their eggs. So there'll be little maggots, little fly larvae that are inside of that serves as food for them. Same thing with the horse manure. We give them table scraps, and I actually want to go into town and try to arrange with some of these restaurants, because these restaurants are throwing gargantuan amounts of food into the landfills. You go to just your local Mexican restaurant and you'll see people walking out of there leaving behind a half plate of uneaten enchiladas or burritos or what have you. That's perfect chicken food. You could go there at the end of the day, grab up all that food, and feed that to your chickens. Chickens love leftovers. So anytime that any food starts to get a little bit old in the refrigerator before it gets moldy, I'll take it out there and give it to the chickens. So Another way that you can feed chickens is with a compost pile. Pile up a big pile of dead leaves, dirt, sticks, pieces of wood, leftovers, just anything that you can pile up, and there'll be all types of insect larvae that will be crawling through that soon enough. And there are chicken farmers that's all they feed, is they let their chickens forage through a giant compost pile, and they find little pieces of old food, they find insect larvae, and the action of those chickens raking through that compost aerates the compost and keeps it oxygenated. It's really a good system. Toscadonna says we grow hay grazer for our cows, and maybe once or twice per year when it snows, we give them a few cattle cubes, but that's it. Cubes are expensive and not something we want to give to cattle. Yeah, that's something happening right now with all the livestock, the industrial feeding of grains and cubes and everything, is that the cost of producing those products is going up and up and up, and therefore the feed cost is going up and up and up. So those people like me and Greg Judy, Joel Salatin, Gabe Brown, people that have for some number of years been weaning their livestock off of commercial feed and building the soil carbon, building the forage potential of the acreage, are able to slowly wean themselves off of this expensive feed and have our animals live off of the land, which is the natural way to do it. It just can take a little bit of time, depending on how depleted your soils are, when you begin to make that transition. But the sooner you make that transition, the better. Thank you for your answer. You are welcome, Lori. Green Ghost, what about tossing a cast net at a local pond for minnows and such? Yeah, I think that's a great idea. See, there's an anti-nutrient in minnows. I believe it's called thiaminase. Let me see. See if I can pull that up. Yeah, however, we have become increasingly aware of an enzyme called thiaminase, often found in feeder fish, widely used as food, such as goldfish and minnows. Enzymes are chemicals found in living things that work to speed up chemical reactions. Thiaminase breaks down vitamin B1. And so when you feed minnows, to especially raw minnows, to chickens over a long period of time, you can actually cause a vitamin B1 deficiency because of the anti-nutrient, which is in this case an enzyme that will break down thiamine. Thiamine is vitamin B1. And so, yeah, I think that feeding them minnows is a great idea, especially if it's, you do it once a week, something like that, if that's your source. If you do it on the regular, like it's most of your feed is the minnows, probably best to cook them. But the cooking will destroy the thiaminase. Now, you don't know how much of the minnows vitamin B1 has been destroyed by the time you cook it, but at least the chicken won't be consuming the active thiaminase, which could potentially go into the chicken's tissues and destroy the vitamin B1 that's in the chicken. So that's the issue with minnows. You're welcome, Green Ghost. All right. Well, I guess that's what we've covered about all we can today. I hope that you come back again. I appreciate you attending the live stream today. I wish that I would have put the link to the live stream up sooner so that OTC could have come on, because I think he wanted to come on the live stream. But between now and then, be sure and watch the videos on the Garland Farms channel. Thumbs up, like, maybe share, and maybe compile a list of questions that we can explore on the next live stream. But for now, I guess I'll say goodbye. I love you all. Thanks again for coming.